Tomorrow at 1 p.m. and 7:30 at the Crescent Arts Centre, the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra will be putting on a concert that features two of Canada's most respected culture-melding composers. The Juno Award-winning Sri Lankan-Canadian composer, pianist, conductor, and creative advocate, Dinuk Wijeratne, and the tabla virtuoso and professor at McGill's Schulich School of Music, Shawn Mativetsky. Known for his boundary-crossing compositions and advocacy for the creative energy that is such an essential part of the musician's experience, Dinuk Wijeratne has established himself as a composer and conductor that sees no limits. He has studied at the Juilliard School with John Corigliano and the Royal College of Music in the UK, and has amassed a number of commissions that have been heard across Canada and the United States. Percussionist, teacher, and composer Shawn Mativetsky is one of Canada's leading ambassadors of the tabla and has actively sought to bring together the world of Indian classical music with the traditions of Western art music. Currently on faculty at the Schulich School of Music at McGill, Mativetsky teaches percussion and tabla workshops across Canada and is a disciple of the tabla guru Pandit Sharda Sahai. The concert tomorrow night will feature the music of Bartok, Elgar, and three works written by Dinuk Wijeratne, one of which was written on a joint commission for the MCO and in collaboration with Musique de Montréal. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio, I am joined by Dinuk Wijeratne and Shawn Mativetsky. Hi, Dinuk and Shawn. Nice to have you here.
It's great to be here.
Dinuk, I want to start with you. I believe the last time you were here in Winnipeg was pre-pandemic, back in 2019. How does it feel to be back here in Winnipeg performing and conducting the MCO?
It feels great. It's always great to be here in Winnipeg, and that really felt like the before times, like a lot has happened since, so it's great to be back.
And this time you've brought with you Shawn. Shawn, can you talk about how you first met Dinuk, and can you talk about some of the collaborative work you've done with him?
Sure. So as a tabla player interested in these kind of cross-cultural collaborations, I became aware of what Dinuk was doing, and I guess we reached out to each other over email, and we knew each other for a number of years because of the work that each other was doing, and especially when the tabla concerto came to be, that was, I just had to find out more. But it was only relatively recently we figured that it was around 2019 that we actually played together for the first time, and that we collaborated musically in person together for the first time.
Dinuk, one of the things I find so fascinating about your music is this mixture of South Asian music with Western music, in particular regards to rhythms and what sounds like rhythmic complexity. Are there any challenges that are created when it comes to note hitting and getting across your rhythmic ideas to members of a Western classical ensemble and audience? How do you bridge that oral tradition that is very often taught with South Asian music and the classical rote tradition?
Yeah, there are actually many challenges. In fact, it really is like a sort of culture clash when you try to sort of capture in a bottle the sound that you're trying to create. So you bring up the topic of notation. That is one of those things. Notation for me, and and I say this as a Western classical musician, right? Notation is both a blessing and a curse, because on the one hand, it's a blessing because it allows us to transmit pieces over hundreds of years. So, we can play a Brahms symphony just because it exists in notation. But I always think of these thought experiments where, can you imagine where if Western classical music relied upon teacher-student transmission. So we were playing that same Brahms symphony with no notation, but we were just taught, my viola teacher taught me the viola part, and now I'm, and let's say that was happening over hundreds of years. How would that sound in performance now? It would be really fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think, but because we have notation, play to its strengths, but yes, in very locally, when you're trying to sort of capture the complexity of Indian classical music, for example, you have to try and find the most friction-free way of notating that particular moment in the music. So someone in the ensemble will be unhappy because of the way it's been notated, but you hope that you can find a friction-free way of doing it.
So when it comes to rhythm, I very often think that South Asian musicians have a deeper understanding of rhythm and a natural internal pulse that is on, I think, very often a whole other level than classically trained musicians. Shawn, I'm going to turn this question over to you. I'm presuming you started out as a percussionist. How were you introduced to the tabla, and what drew you to it specifically?
Yeah, so you're right. I started at 7 years old with Western drums. And so, growing up with drums and playing and in high school in the band and this and that, and I heard tabla one day. And I was, whoa, what is that? I never heard any drum that could make that kind of sound. I hadn't heard these kinds of rhythms before, but I had no idea, where it was from, what it was, even that it was called tabla. I had to look on the liner notes of the album, and then just by process of elimination, okay, that one instrument that I didn't know, that must be tabla. Where is it from? I had no idea. Pre-internet, right? I had to go to the library, research, and I was just immediately hooked, immediately fascinated. It was the sound of the instrument first, right? Before Indian classical music, before all the tradition and culture and all that came later, it was the sound of the instrument. And then, like I said, I got hooked, and I had to find out more. I eventually found a teacher, and the more I studied, the more I wanted to learn, and that just kept growing exponentially. And just really, I say that the tabla and Indian classical music completely changed my life, really.
When I was prepping for the interview, I took a deep dive into tabla music and it sounds. I mean, you've just got these two drums, but there's this whole world of sounds that are created by various techniques of touching the drum. Shawn, can you talk about how the drum is built, and can you sort of demonstrate some of the? You've got your tabla here. Can you talk about some of the different sounds that are created with the instrument?
Sure. So the tabla is made up of two drums. The dahina on the right-hand side, made with Indian variety of rosewood called shisham. The baya, the left-hand one, and it's funny, I'm picking it up on as if people can see me, is made of copper or brass. Sometimes you see it as a silver color. It's just stainless steel plated, but it's brass or copper underneath. The left-hand one is larger. It's a bass drum, and the right-hand one is smaller. Both have goat skin, so we're still using natural skins for tabla. And both have a black spot called siai. And it's the siai that makes the tabla sound like tabla. And you'll be able to hear that it produces a definite pitch. In this case, close to a B flat. Right? No, tabla is not the only drum in the world that can be tuned. I mean, the timpani in the orchestra is one, but this is something quite common to most Indian classical percussion instruments, that they're tuned to the tonic pitch.
Right.
On the bass side, I can modulate the pitch with pressure, so you can slide, or you can go in a kind of stepwise fashion. This kind of thing. But generally, we're sliding most of the time. And so how we learn is through an oral tradition, right?
Right.
Not through sheet music. And it's just like solfege, do, re, mi. It's called bo. Every sound has a name. So very quick rundown. Na, tin, tun, te, ke, and ge. And sometimes you have to play two at the same time. Right. So we have other syllables, right? Ge and na, for example. I don't know anyone who can speak two words at the same time, right? So ge and na makes da. Ge and tin makes din. Right? There's just a couple examples. And really you can view these as letters of the alphabet. That's what they are, literally. So some letters, we can make some words, right? So tete, tire kita, kita taka, tire kita taka. Longer words. Dha tire kita taka, taka tire kita taka, dere dere kita taka, tinna kita taka. Right? Then you know some words, you can make a sentence. Dha tire kita taka, tak tire kita taka, dha tire kita taka, tinna kita taka. Right? And so.
So I guess I sort of was leading my next question. I mean, rhythmically, how do you learn the rhythms? Well, it's just a sentence with the words, right?
Exactly. So the guru, the teacher, will speak, recite the composition, and then the student echoes it back. And only after you can speak it, consistently with correct rhythm and everything is correct, then you play it after. But everything comes from the voice first.
Yeah. Amazing. Dinuk, you wrote a tabla concerto, and you were born in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
Where I guess you heard far more tabla than, say, a kid like me who grew up on the Canadian prairie. What is it you enjoy about composing for tabla? And again, we go back to this idea of it's largely an oral tradition. How do you get this across? How do you combine the two with a Western orchestra or a Western ensemble?
Well, actually, I was born in Sri Lanka, but I grew up in Dubai in the Middle East. The wonderful thing about growing up in Dubai was it was a real melting pot of all of these traditions. So I was regularly listening to South Asian musicians just because I would go to concerts. There were fewer concerts of Western musicians and definitely no concerts where I could just buy a ticket and listen to an orchestra.
Right.
So I was discovering all of that by listening to recordings, and I was being trained as a Western musician. But little did I know that all these sounds were going in here. I'm just pointing to my ear now, I guess.
Yeah.
Including Middle Eastern music, which I love. And then, as the saying goes, you leave home and then and all of this stuff comes out. So as a student of Western classical music in the UK and the US, I started to think, well, how can I bring those sounds that I heard in childhood into my music, in a Western classical realm? And I think the Tabla Concerto was the first big well, no, that's not true. Karmic Blue, we're playing the piece Karmic Blue. That I think that predated the Tabla Concerto. But the Tabla Concerto was a really big project where the idea sort of gestated for about 10 years, which was I totally have fallen in love with this instrument, the tabla. But at the same time, I love the instrument that is the Western classical orchestra. It's just an instrument of many heads. But in different ways, they are equally impressive in terms of color. So then I thought, well, how could you have some kind of forum where they could interact? And so the idea just kind of sat there for 10 years, and then it was premiered in 2012, and the pieces had a great life. I mean, it's being played constantly, like every couple of months, actually. And I think soon Shawn goes to BC to play it, and so it really taught me a lot about. Not only musically, but as a human, what we try to do when we try to marry culture and find a way where hopefully the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We're trying to find a respectful dialogue between two entities. And I was just telling Shawn before, over lunch, that the first time you take a pass at something, it's sort of, you've got influence A and influence B, and the first time you take a pass at something, it's always weighted towards one direction. So, it's kind of, you realize that, okay, well, A has been showcased, but B has been shortchanged. You try it again, then, of course, wouldn't you know it, you swing in the other direction. But I find that it takes a lot of time. It's very time-intensive to find that space where hopefully A and B create something that's unique, and they both feel respected. That's hopefully what I'm going for.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be three works of yours performed tomorrow night. Wijeratne, am I saying that right?
Wijeratne, yeah.
Wijeratne.
Yeah.
It's written for piano and strings. A Letter from the Afterlife. It's written for string orchestra. I saw the performance on YouTube that the TSO did. And you're going to be doing this piece out of the Karmic Blue. It's written for chamber ensemble, which makes use of the tabla. You touched on it earlier. Did you write it for Yo-Yo Ma and his Silk Road Ensemble? And
yes.
Can you talk about that piece a bit?
Absolutely. And it originally had some text and vocals, and now we do it in this instrumental version. And it was the first time, just because I knew Sandeep Das would be playing with the Silk Road Ensemble, he was just very open to having a piece with tabla. It was the first time where I really tried to integrate tabla and strings and piano. And that combination of the three is such a magical sound for me personally. Yeah. I just think, well, I love the tabla, I love the piano. Who doesn't love the sound of a string orchestra? So, if you put them together, surely you should be able to create some kind of magical sound. And to this day, when I'm sitting there, I'm conducting from the piano, I'm sitting there and I'm just hearing everyone play together. I just think, wow, this is just such a great sound. Just the timbres of those instruments together. And so that was the first, that was my dipping my toes into the world of how can we bring tabla into this forum.
Where does the title come from? Out of the Karmic Blue, and what is it referencing?
Oh, I mean, it was just something to do with the text where it's about the question is posed. I guess all the people we meet, all of our friends, all of our colleagues. Was that something that was predestined, or are we just some kind of random collision of molecules? And I think that all of these connections, particularly the fruitful ones, are predestined. I was destined to hear the sound of the tabla and make friends with people like Shawn and everything, and meet orchestras like this. And so the piece kind of celebrates that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I have to say, when I heard a letter from the afterlife, I might be way off base, but the string writing, especially right at the beginning,
is a tabla rhythm.
It reminded me of a tabla.
It is.
So I'm not kooky, right?
No, not at all. In fact, it is a tabla kaida, which is a particular type of tabla composition. And I actually forget to say that to some audiences, so you're quite right to point that out. I came up with the string rhythm from tabla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And I just got to say for our listeners, you make some great use of the Schubert Death and the Maiden quartet in that piece as well, incorporating. It's really, really a fantastic piece. Shawn, as a tabla player, what is it like? What is it you particularly enjoy about playing Dinuk's music? And I have to also ask, tomorrow night is Out of the Karmic Blue the only piece that you're going to be playing on the program?
No, so there'll also be a traditional tabla solo, very short, because normally should be at least 1 hour. We'll do a very, very short little taste of a traditional tabla solo, just to kind of show the instrument in its traditional context, though with piano accompaniment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that'll be a little fun thing, improvised. But what do I like about playing tabla? Or in this music.
Dinuk's music, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's this blend of the musical cultures, Western classical and Indian classical, but it's more than that. The collaboration together is just so much fun, and really, I come with my tabla and I sit down, and yes, the orchestra music is composed, but I have a lot of freedom in my part. So it's recognizable that it's the same every time, but it's different every time.
Yeah.
Right. So this and that's this aspect from Indian classical music that makes its way over, is that I know it's never the same thing twice. There's always like a little look over, a little wink, the tempo pushes or pulls that way, or little moments, or you're improvising too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So within the scope of the composition, that there's a flexibility, there's a freedom, right? Like my part in Out of the Karmic Blue it's not fully notated. It's mainly in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked it out together, but it's free. There's this freedom.
Yeah.
Right? I'm there with my two little drums, and we see what happens, and I enjoy that a lot, and especially with Dinuk, it's a nice collaboration.
Oh, that's fantastic. Dinuk. Gajaga Vanama was written with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra and E-Musique de Montréal. It was a joint commission. Mm-hmm. As a composer, have you done the composer thing and revised it all? And for you as a composer, where do you stand on that? Like, I think of some composers constantly reworking works, or do you just sort of let it lie? What are your thoughts on that?
Generally, if I have enough time, and time is becoming an increasingly scarce commodity now that I've become a dad. If I have enough time, usually I find that I'm fairly satisfied with the piece, but give me more time and I will continue to tinker with them, Yeah. And Gajaga is a totally Sri Lankan influenced piece, at least that's how it was designed, but influences from all other places have also crept in.
Yeah. Amazing. I'll wrap up the conversation by asking you both if there's any one thing in the concerts tomorrow that you're really looking forward to, maybe a particular musical moment or emotion or whatever. Shawn, maybe I'll start with you.
That's a tough one. I don't know. For me, it's just fun all around. I'm only playing on the two pieces, and the two pieces I'm playing are a lot of fun, and they're great. And it's the improv aspect that I mentioned before. And today in rehearsal, when I arrived, I was like, oh, I didn't like where the tabla riser was placed. I want to see Dinuk better. I want to see your face. When you look over and there's that connection. Like
Right.
That's the pleasure of it. Yeah.
And Dinuk, how about you?
Well, I mean, it's such a great privilege to have Shawn on this program. I am looking forward to I'm keeping my fingers crossed, trying to stitch together some kind of experience for the audience, because I think there are quite a few pieces, so there are some kind of short pieces and everything, but they're connected with each other in very interesting ways. So one thing that was just missing from your list was we are actually giving the Canadian premiere of a fantastic string orchestra piece by Karim Rustam,
Right.
who's my colleague, a Syrian-American composer. His music is played all over the world. And Dabke is like a little gem, right? And it's based on an Arabic dance form. And that connects so beautifully, for example, to the dance rhythms in all the other pieces, Bartok, Gajaga, Karmic Blue. And then you've got the Elgar Serenade in there, because I heard that when I was a teen, And so I'm really hoping I can curate and stitch together this experience for the audience, and that they hear the intersectionality between all the pieces.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. Shawn and Dinuk, this has just been a real treat to have you here today. I am sure the concerts tomorrow at 1 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. at the Crescent Arts Center with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra are going to be just fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today. This has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.